Emma adjusted her seatbelt nervously, her fingers trembling slightly as she took in the cockpit of the F-22. It was nothing like the simulators she had seen at air shows or the videos she had watched late into the night. Here, in the metal shell of one of the most advanced fighter jets in the world, every surface was sleek, cold, and purposeful. Knobs, switches, levers, and screens covered almost every inch of the cockpit, each one hinting at incredible power and precision. Captain Reynolds, a veteran pilot with more than 15 years in the Air Force, noticed Emma's awe and offered her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said, his voice calm yet commanding. "Just watch me for now. Try not to touch anything. Unless I tell you." His hand brushed over the throttle lightly, and Emma felt a strange thrill watching him manipulate the controls, so confidently, as though the jet were an extension of his own body. She had never imagined she would be here, not as a pilot or trainee, but as a civilian guest, allowed to ride along in an elite squadron's training exercise. It felt surreal, like stepping into a world reserved for only a select few. Every nerve in her body buzzed with excitement and fear. She could feel the energy of the aircraft before the engines even roared to life, a palpable sense that it demanded respect. The squadron's other F-22s were lined up outside, their polished surfaces reflecting the morning sun. Each jet was poised, ready for maneuvers, their pilots checking instruments and performing pre-flight routines. Emma felt small in comparison, yet deeply privileged. She had spent years fascinated by aviation, reading about the history of the Air Force, the evolution of fighter jets, and the discipline it took to fly them. But fascination was different from reality. Reality was the smell of jet fuel in her nose, the vibration under her feet, the hum of electronics surrounding her. Captain Reynolds noticed her gaze wandering and chuckled. "Don't worry, you'll get used to it. Or at least, I hope so," he said with a wink. "A first time is always intense." He tapped a button, and the jet's systems came alive with a low hum, the cockpit lighting up with screens and gauges. Emma's pulse quickened. The sounds, the displays, the subtle vibrations, it was like the jet itself was waking up, preparing for flight. She remembered the safety briefing before boarding, the checklist they had run through, emergency procedures, communication protocols, the autopilot function, and a brief overview of controls. But nothing could truly prepare her for this, the living, breathing complexity of a fighter jet mid-preparation. She reached out instinctively to touch a dial, but Reynolds caught her hand with a gentle laugh. "Not yet. You'll have your turn, eventually. Maybe." The engines roared to life, vibrating through the floor and rattling the cockpit. Emma gripped the armrests, feeling the sheer power of the aircraft. Outside, the other F-22s started taxiing, their pilots moving with a practiced synchronicity that Emma found mesmerizing. Reynolds guided the jet onto the runway, and she could feel the difference in weight, in momentum, in potential. The jet wasn't just metal, it was a living force, ready to respond to every twitch of the controls. "Ready?" Reynolds asked, looking over at her. Emma swallowed hard, nodded, and whispered, "Ready." They accelerated down the runway, and the world blurred outside the canopy. The ground seemed to vanish beneath them as the jet lifted smoothly into the air, climbing with an almost unnatural grace. Emma's stomach dropped with the initial ascent, a thrilling mix of fear and exhilaration. Her ears popped, the canopy pressed against her face, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. The sky was a brilliant blue, stretched endlessly around them, with the sun glinting off the wings of the other F-22s. The formation held tight, a choreographed display of skill and discipline. Emma's eyes darted between the instruments, the pilot, and the neighboring jets, trying to absorb everything at once. She felt as though she were floating in a different universe, one of speed, precision, and calculated danger. Captain Reynolds pointed out various controls and indicators, explaining their function. These screens monitor everything: altitude, speed, engine performance, radar contact. This lever here adjusts flaps. This one manages thrust. Every movement matters. Emma nodded, taking it all in, trying to memorize details that could never be learned in a single ride. Her mind raced with questions, but she was also trying not to let her excitement show too much. She wanted to appear composed, though. The truth was, she was trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. The first maneuvers were gentle. Smooth turns, controlled climbs, and basic banking. The F-22 responded like a dream, precise and obedient. Emma couldn't help but marvel at the technology and at Reynolds' skill. Every movement he made seemed effortless, yet she knew the margin for error was razor thin. One misjudged turn, one delayed reaction, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Her admiration for him, and for the pilots who dedicated their lives to this craft, deepened with every second. They ascended higher, weaving between clouds that stretched like cotton in the endless sky. Emma felt a rush of liberation, the sense of flying almost intoxicating. She imagined what it must feel like to command such power regularly, to be trusted with a machine that could accelerate faster than most could comprehend. The thought made her both giddy and nervous. Reynolds glanced at her, noticing her growing confidence mixed with lingering apprehension. "Don't worry if you feel overwhelmed," he said. "Even experienced pilots feel that at first. The key is focus, awareness, and staying calm." His calmness was contagious, grounding her nerves just enough for her to breathe and appreciate the moment. He allowed her to place her hands lightly on the control stick, guiding her through minor inputs. The jet responded gently under his supervision, tilting slightly as she moved it forward and back. It was a revelation feeling the aircraft respond, a living extension of her hands. Emma's heart soared. For a fleeting moment, she imagined what it would be like if she could fly solo someday, though she knew the dream was far from reach. The other jets in the formation occasionally performed synchronized maneuvers, banking sharply, rolling elegantly through the clouds. Reynolds explained each movement, emphasizing safety, coordination, and awareness. Emma listened intently, feeling as though she were part of a living, breathing ballet of speed and precision. The sheer skill of the squadron humbled her, yet also ignited a spark of determination within her. Despite the thrill, Emma remained acutely aware of the risks. One wrong move, one lapse in attention, and disaster could strike. But Reynolds' steady presence reassured her. "Trust the plane, trust yourself, and trust us," he said. Those words settled over her like a lifeline, a mantra she would cling to in the moments to come. As they continued to climb and perform maneuvers, the sun reflected off the instruments, casting a metallic glow across the cockpit. Emma felt a mixture of fear, admiration, and exhilaration she had never experienced. She realized she was experiencing something few civilians ever would, the raw thrill of flight in one of the world's most advanced fighter jets. She inhaled deeply, savoring the smell of electronics, fuel, and adrenaline. For the first time, Emma felt fully alive, fully present, suspended between earth and sky, awe and fear, thrill and reverence. She was merely a passenger, yet every nerve, every thought, every heartbeat was connected to the flight. And she had no idea that the extraordinary events awaiting her would soon test everything she thought she knew about herself, courage, and destiny. Emma had started to relax, marveling at the agility of the F-22 as it sliced through clouds with breathtaking precision. Captain Reynolds had been chatting about minor technical details, explaining instrument readings, and pointing out how the squadron maintained formation at such high speeds. For a moment, the flight felt surreal but safe, a thrilling experience she could almost believe was scripted. Then it happened. Reynolds' hand trembled slightly over the throttle. Emma noticed it before she could even fully process the movement. "Captain?" she asked nervously, leaning forward. But he didn't respond. His head tilted to the side, eyes fluttering briefly before closing completely. Emma froze, staring at him in shock. The man who had seemed so invincible, so calm, so skilled, was now slumped in his seat, unresponsive. Her heart skipped a beat. Her hands instinctively reached toward the controls, but she hesitated. This was supposed to be a demonstration flight, a routine ride. Nothing in her life had prepared her for this. Outside, the other F-22s circled in tight formation, expecting the lead pilot to maintain direction. Radio chatter crackled urgently, voices sharp and questioning. "Reynolds, do you copy? Lead response status?" But the cockpit remained eerily silent, save for the whirring hum of instruments and the roar of the engines. Emma's mind raced. She had always admired Reynolds' composure and skill, but now she realized that admiration hadn't prepared her for responsibility. Autopilot could keep the jet level, but it couldn't handle emergency maneuvers, evasive actions, or complex communication. They were flying at supersonic speeds. One wrong move could be catastrophic. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself, but fear pressed against her chest like a physical weight. She remembered snippets of Reynolds' pre-flight briefing, tiny bits of guidance about basic controls and emergency protocols. Her brain grasped for anything useful. The throttle? Flaps? Radar? Communication? Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but she forced herself to breathe deeply, focusing on the instruments in front of her. She had to act. She had no choice. Her hands shook as they hovered over the controls. Emma's fingers brushed a lever by accident, and the jet shifted slightly in response. The sudden motion jolted her into action. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "I can do this. I have to." Her voice was barely audible, but it carried a thread of determination she hadn't known she possessed. Then came the radio. One of the squadron pilots spoke sharply, tension in every syllable. "Lead, respond. What's your status?" Emma's pulse spiked. The call was directed at Reynolds, but she realized that, in some way, it was also directed at her. The squadron couldn't know what was happening yet. They assumed the lead was still in command. This is Passenger 1, she stammered, her voice trembling as she adopted the call sign Reynolds had jokingly given her earlier. I think the pilot's unconscious. I need instructions." Silence crackled over the radio for a brief, suspended moment. Then came a mixture of astonished and urgent voices. "Passenger 1? Is that you? Stay calm. We've got you. Just follow our instructions." Relief mixed with terror in Emma's chest. They were responding people trusted her, but she barely knew what she was doing. The first step was stabilization. The plane rocked slightly, the engines whining as turbulence nudged it off course. Emma's hands gripped the control stick tightly, following each command carefully. Push forward gently. Adjust the throttle by 10%. Slight left bank. The squadron's voices were calm but urgent, guiding her every move. Each successful adjustment gave her a sliver of confidence, though her heart still hammered. The realization struck her. She was controlling one of the most advanced fighter jets in existence, in a life-or-death scenario, with the squadron's lives indirectly depending on her ability to listen and act. Panic lingered, but determination steadily edged it out. Emma glanced down at Reynolds. His face was pale, still unmoving, and a pang of fear shot through her. He had always seemed untouchable, the perfect example of control and skill. Now he was vulnerable, human, dependent on her, not intentionally, but by circumstance. She couldn't dwell on that. She needed to act. The squadron guided her through a series of maneuvers to stabilize altitude and speed. Emma's hands moved with a mix of instinct and strict adherence to their instructions. She repeated commands quietly to herself, as if chanting a mantra. Throttle, flaps, altitude, stay calm. The words grounded her, giving structure to the chaos. Time stretched. Seconds felt like minutes as turbulence shook the plane, clouds obscured vision, and radio chatter buzzed relentlessly. Emma focused entirely on the jet, the instruments, and the voices guiding her. Each successful input strengthened her confidence slightly, though the fear never fully disappeared. She felt a strange mix of awe and terror, her heart racing, her mind hyper-focused, and adrenaline coursing through every nerve. At one point, the plane tilted too sharply in a sudden gust of wind. Emma panicked for a heartbeat, but remembered the squadron's instructions. Pull back gently. Reduce speed slightly. Adjust flaps. She heard, her hands responding instantly. The jet leveled out smoothly, almost obedient to her trembling touch. A surge of relief washed over her, accompanied by a realization she could do this. Still, uncertainty loomed. Every action she took carried enormous weight. Outside, the sky stretched wide and beautiful, the sunlight dazzling on metallic wings, yet she barely noticed it. Her awareness was entirely consumed by the cockpit, the instruments, and Reynolds' unresponsive form beside her. Every second demanded focus. Every decision mattered. Then came a brief moment of clarity. Emma realized she needed a strategy, not just reaction. Panic would only make mistakes inevitable. She took a deep breath, grounding herself. One step at a time, she whispered. Stabilize, communicate, follow instructions, and keep the plane safe. The mantra helped calm her shaking hands, just enough to act with purpose. She began to repeat each command aloud, confirming every adjustment with the squadron. Throttle set. Altitude holding. Flaps neutral. The repetition became a rhythm, a lifeline keeping her mind clear. The voices on the radio encouraged her, praising successful adjustments, providing reassurance she desperately needed. In this moment, the call sign, Passenger 1, became more than a joke. It became her identity, a beacon of action amidst chaos. Minutes stretched on, yet she felt like hours had passed. Each minor adjustment mattered. Each success felt monumental. The squadron's trust became palpable, their guidance and calm voices giving her courage she hadn't known she possessed. She realized that, despite being a civilian, she was now central to this crisis. The situation was surreal, terrifying, and utterly consuming. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the plane's movements steadied, the autopilot maintaining basic control under her careful supervision. Emma's hands relaxed slightly on the controls, though her mind remained sharp and alert. She had survived the first wave of panic, maintained control, and most importantly, stabilized the aircraft. Yet deep down, Emma knew the real challenge hadn't even begun. The pilot remained unconscious. The jet was still supersonic, and the squadron relied on her every input. She understood, with a sinking awareness, that the true test of her courage and focus was about to arrive. Maneuvers, communication, and perhaps even landing, all under extreme pressure. The flight that began as a thrilling experience had transformed into an urgent trial of survival, courage, and instinct. Emma inhaled, whispering the mantra once more. Stabilize, communicate, follow instructions. Her voice, shaky but determined, carried authority she never imagined she could summon. The call sign echoed in her mind. Passenger 1. The joke was gone. She was now the pilot, in every essential way that mattered, navigating an unprecedented emergency in the skies above the United States. Emma's hands trembled over the controls, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, focusing on each gauge, each lever, and each sound in the cockpit. The roar of the engines filled her ears, vibrating through her chest, while the hum of electronics created a constant reminder of the intricate machine beneath her fingers. She repeated the squadron's instructions aloud, a mantra against the rising panic. Throttle, flaps, altitude. Check, adjust, hold. The repetition tethered her mind, transforming her from a frozen passenger into someone capable of deliberate action. The squadron's voices remained calm but insistent, guiding her every step. Passenger 1, keep altitude steady at 25,000. Bank left slightly to maintain formation. Emma obeyed, her hands shaking at first, but gaining steadiness with each successful adjustment. The F-22 responded, tilting gracefully under her control. For the first time, she felt a spark of confidence. It was fragile and fleeting, but it existed, and she clung to it. Captain Reynolds lay unconscious beside her, and the reality of the situation weighed heavily on Emma. The jet was a marvel of technology, capable of supersonic speeds and complex maneuvers, yet it required an experienced hand to manage it safely. She had neither experience nor training, but the squadron's voices became her lifeline. Each instruction they gave, each piece of guidance, was absorbed and executed with increasing precision. Passenger 1, reduce throttle slightly. Maintain heading. Good, steady. You're doing fine, one pilot said. Emma's heart surged at the praise, though it was tempered by fear. She realized she was performing actions that, mere moments ago, she had only observed in videos or read about in books. Now, she was the one controlling the aircraft, responsible for maintaining stability and safety. She glanced down at the control panel, scanning every dial and readout. Altitude, stable. Speed, steady. Flaps, neutral. Everything was responding to her touch. The sensation was surreal, almost hypnotic. The F-22, a machine of incredible complexity, moved as though it were alive, obeying her commands precisely. Emma felt a strange connection with it, a symbiotic relationship born of focus, instinct, and adrenaline. A sudden gust of wind rocked the plane, tilting it sharply. Emma froze for a heartbeat, panic clawing at her chest. Then she heard the squadron leader's calm voice in her ear. Passenger 1, bank right 5 degrees. Gently now. She exhaled and moved the stick, feeling the aircraft respond instantly. Relief and exhilaration surged together. She had corrected it. The feeling was intoxicating. She realized she could act, and her fear became a fuel rather than a cage. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Emma continued to stabilize the jet. Every maneuver, every adjustment was a test of focus and nerve. She relied entirely on the squadron's instructions, but she also began anticipating minor changes, predicting how the jet would respond to turbulence or control inputs. It was a frightening responsibility, yet it awakened a clarity of mind she had never experienced. Passenger 1, maintain heading. Good. Keep steady. We've got you, the squadron leader repeated. Emma's lips tightened in concentration. The phrase became a heartbeat, a reassurance that she was not alone. She was guiding the plane, but the pilots flanking her offered a network of support. Every word, every instruction, every adjustment reinforced her sense of control. She began experimenting with small, deliberate maneuvers, guided by instructions. The jet banked, turned, and adjusted altitude under her hands. The initial terror that had frozen her in place was gone, replaced by a focused energy. Emma realized that fear alone could no longer dominate her. Action, focus, and trust were essential. The pilot slumped beside her was unconscious, yet she was alive, thinking, reacting, and guiding. The transition from passenger to operator was complete. A sudden alert beeped on the control panel, signaling minor turbulence ahead. Emma's heart raced again, but she remembered the mantra: breathe, focus, act. Throttle down slightly. Bank left gently. Adjust flaps to neutral. She followed the commands, and the jet leveled smoothly. Relief washed over her, accompanied by a rising sense of empowerment. Each successful maneuver reinforced her confidence, and she realized she was beginning to trust herself, even in this unprecedented situation. Outside, the other F-22s maintained formation, circling and observing her movements. The squadron's trust in her grew with every controlled adjustment. She could hear subtle encouragement in their voices, a mix of amazement and reassurance. "Passenger one, you're steady. Keep it up." The words echoed in her mind, reinforcing the delicate balance between fear and skill that had become her reality. Emma began to notice patterns in the instruments and the jet's responses. Minor turbulence, gusts, and wind shifts no longer caused immediate panic. Instead, they became challenges to anticipate and correct. Her hands moved more fluidly, her breathing more measured. She was learning to read the aircraft in real time, translating instinct and instruction into precise action. The passenger she had been minutes ago was gone. In her place stood someone capable, focused, and surprisingly composed under pressure. Captain Reynolds remained unconscious, a stark reminder of the stakes. Emma's focus sharpened further. She realized that survival depended on absolute attention to detail, swift reaction to changing conditions, and unbroken trust in her instincts and guidance. She became hyper-aware of every instrument reading, every sound from the engines, every subtle shift in the aircraft's movement. Time slowed. Seconds became eternities as she responded to each challenge. Passenger 1, minor adjustment to speed. Slight climb. Good steady. "You're handling this well," a squadron pilot said. Emma nodded, even though they could not see her. Her voice gained steadiness as she responded with precision. Throttle adjusted. Altitude stable. Heading maintained. The repetition became a rhythm, a harmony between human and machine, guided by remote voices that tethered her to reality. The sky stretched endlessly, bright and clear, with occasional clouds drifting lazily by. The sensation of speed, power, and altitude combined with the gravity of responsibility to create an overwhelming intensity. Emma's mind was alive with focus, every thought consumed by the act of controlling the jet, keeping it level, and following instructions. She realized she was no longer experiencing the flight passively. She was living every moment actively, consciously, and decisively. Then came the first test of her initiative. The autopilot beeped an alert for a minor course deviation. Emma's instinct kicked in. She glanced at the instruments, confirmed the squadron's guidance, and adjusted the controls herself. The jet responded instantly, returning to the correct heading. Relief, pride, and disbelief coursed through her simultaneously. She had acted on her own judgment and succeeded. The realization struck her. She was no longer just following instructions. She was beginning to make decisions, guided by instinct, training, and courage. Minutes turned into what felt like an eternity, yet every movement reinforced her sense of agency. Emma's confidence grew incrementally, step by step, maneuver by maneuver. She had transformed from a frightened, passive observer into an active pilot, capable of navigating one of the most sophisticated fighter jets in existence under extreme pressure. The squadron's voices remained her anchor, yet she no longer relied solely on them. She could anticipate, respond, and act with increasing independence. The fear was still present, but it had been tempered into focus and energy. Emma realized that the passenger she had been only moments ago was gone, replaced by someone capable of rising to extraordinary challenges under intense pressure. Finally, as the initial chaos settled, Emma allowed herself a brief glance at Captain Reynolds. Though unconscious, he was stable, and the jet remained under control. Her heart raced, not from panic, but from exhilaration and relief. She had taken control. She had succeeded. She was no longer simply a passenger. The call sign, Passenger 1 had transformed from a joking nickname into a symbol of capability, courage, and determination. Every time she repeated it over the radio, she felt a surge of empowerment. She was no longer the civilian guest in the cockpit. She was the pilot in command, however temporary, and she was handling it. Emma exhaled slowly, letting a moment of calm wash over her. The jet glided smoothly, instruments steady, engines humming in a controlled rhythm. Outside, the squadron continued to flank her, providing guidance and assurance. She realized that this was not just a test of skill, it was a test of nerve, focus, and resilience. She had passed the first stage, but she knew that the challenges ahead would demand even more. As she steadied the aircraft and confirmed systems were functioning correctly, Emma reflected on the transformation she had undergone in mere minutes. From a terrified passenger to a decisive, competent operator, she had discovered a reservoir of courage and focus she never knew existed. She knew the flight was far from over, yet a sense of purpose now burned brightly within her. The sky stretched endlessly before her, brilliant and infinite, yet the danger remained real. Emma gripped the controls with newfound confidence, repeating the mantra that had carried her through the initial panic. Stabilize, communicate, follow instructions. She was ready for the next challenge, whatever it might be. Emma's hands moved more confidently over the controls now, but her heart still raced with the awareness of responsibility. Captain Reynolds remained unconscious beside her, a silent reminder of the stakes at hand. The F-22 hummed steadily beneath her fingers, the instruments lighting up with precise readings, responding instantly to every adjustment she made. Outside, the sky stretched endless and brilliant, the horizon a ribbon of pale blue merging into the clouds. The radio crackled again, voices urgent yet measured. Passenger 1, maintain altitude. Keep heading steady. We've got you, the squadron leader said. Emma felt a shiver run through her, not from fear this time, but from the realization that they trusted her. A civilian, a mere guest in the cockpit, was now the point of command in a critical situation. The call sign she had once thought of as a joke had become her identity, her lifeline. She repeated the call sign aloud, almost as a mantra. Passenger 1. The words felt different on her tongue this time, carrying weight and authority. The squadron had begun to echo it, their voices affirming her presence. Passenger 1. Adjust throttle slightly. Good, steady, keep it up. Each repetition reinforced her confidence, binding her focus and determination to the role she had been thrust into. Emma adjusted the throttle as instructed, carefully monitoring the altitude, heading, and speed. Each input was deliberate, measured, and precise. The jet responded smoothly, tilting, turning, and leveling according to her movements. She began to anticipate minor changes, turbulence, shifts in wind, minor course deviations, and responded instinctively, though always double-checking with the squadron. It was a delicate balance of trust, intuition, and meticulous attention. A sudden gust of wind rocked the plane sharply, tilting it unexpectedly. Emma's hands reacted almost automatically, banking the jet as she had been taught and stabilizing the aircraft. A voice over the radio praised her. Good correction. Passenger 1. Smooth and steady. Relief surged through her, followed by an almost dizzying sense of empowerment. She had made a critical adjustment on her own, without explicit instruction, and succeeded. The squadron's confidence in her grew with each maneuver. Passenger 1. Maintain formation. Heading 280. Altitude check, came another voice. Emma obeyed, repeating the measurements aloud. Altitude 25,000. Heading 280. Stable. Her voice no longer trembled. The mantra of the call sign, the guidance of the squadron, and the focus she had forced herself to adopt were working together to steady both her mind and her hands. She glanced at Captain Reynolds again. His face was pale but stable, the rhythm of his breathing reassuring. Emma allowed herself a brief acknowledgement of relief, knowing he was safe for now, though still unconscious. The reality of the situation pressed upon her. She was piloting an elite fighter jet, one capable of supersonic speeds, under extraordinary circumstances. Every decision, every maneuver, every movement mattered. Despite the tension, Emma found herself settling into a rhythm. The autopilot handled basic course correction, but she now made the finer adjustments, guided by both instinct and instruction. The planes surrounding her maintained tight formation, flanking her like guardians. The F-22s moved as a single entity, with Emma at the center, a civilian unexpectedly elevated to leadership by circumstance. Passenger 1, throttle adjustment, slight climb. Steady, the squadron instructed. Emma complied, feeling the jet respond almost effortlessly. She noted the patterns, the subtle shifts in air pressure, the changing vibrations of the engines, the faint oscillations in speed and altitude. With each observation, she acted preemptively, anticipating problems before they became dangerous. Her confidence grew incrementally, each successful adjustment reinforcing the belief that she could manage this crisis. A sudden alert beeped on the instrument panel, signaling minor turbulence and a slight deviation in heading. Emma's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to act calmly. Adjusting heading 2 degrees left. Altitude stable. Flaps neutral, she reported over the radio. The squadron responded almost immediately. Good, Passenger 1? Smooth correction. Maintain focus. You're doing great. Their encouragement was a lifeline, bolstering her determination to remain steady, focused, and precise. As she continued to pilot the aircraft, Emma became aware of a subtle shift in her perspective. She was no longer simply reacting to the squadron's instructions. She was learning, observing patterns, and anticipating the jet's responses. Each maneuver became an exercise in prediction, analysis, and execution. She realized she had entered a state of heightened awareness, where instinct and logic worked together seamlessly. The call sign, once a playful nickname, now resonated in her mind as a symbol of authority and capability. She repeated it silently when doubt crept in. Passenger 1. It anchored her focus, reminding her that she had been entrusted with an incredible responsibility and that she was capable of fulfilling it. Every instruction she executed correctly, every adjustment she made successfully, reinforced that identity. Suddenly, a heavier gust pushed the jet off course. Emma reacted instantly, banking and adjusting throttle in tandem. Heading correction complete. Altitude stable. Flaps neutral, she reported. The squadron's response was immediate and approving. Excellent work, Passenger 1. Keep steady. We've got your back. Relief and exhilaration intertwined. For the first time, Emma felt a rare combination of fear, excitement, and pride of recognition that she was managing a high-stakes situation successfully. She began to notice small details she had missed before. The subtle vibration differences in the engines during climbing, the way the instruments responded to shifts in pitch, the faint changes in the horizon line during banking. Each observation informed her next movement, allowing her to act with increasing precision. Her hands moved with confidence now, guided by both instinct and explicit instruction. Despite the confidence, Emma remained acutely aware of the dangers. One mistake, one lapse in focus, and disaster could strike. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her, but it no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it sharpened her awareness, compelling her to maintain vigilance and composure. Every movement became deliberate, every decision considered, every adjustment critical. The other F-22s continued to flank her, providing guidance and reassurance. Passenger 1, maintain speed. Altitude check. Good work. Keep it steady, one pilot said. Emma repeated the metrics aloud, a rhythm forming in her voice and actions. The flight, once a surreal adventure, had transformed into a delicate choreography of human and machine, guided by collaboration, focus, and trust. As they continued, the squadron began to depend on her more actively. Minor course corrections, subtle maneuvers, and responsive adjustments all required her attention. Emma felt the pressure keenly, but also a growing sense of empowerment. She was no longer simply a passenger. She was an integral part of the operation. Her voice carried authority, her hands executed commands, and her mind navigated an extraordinary set of challenges. A final gust of wind rocked the jet slightly, and Emma responded instinctively, adjusting throttle, banking gently, and stabilizing the aircraft. "Smooth correction, Passenger One," came the squadron's voice, echoing over the radio. A surge of pride and relief coursed through her. She had acted independently, successfully, and under extreme pressure. The mantra, the call sign, the squadron's guidance all had converged to create a moment of triumph amidst chaos. Emma exhaled, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The initial terror had been replaced by focus, skill, and awareness. She knew the flight was far from over, but she had proven to herself and to the squadron that she was capable of rising to the occasion. The call sign, Passenger One, had become more than a nickname. It was a declaration of courage, capability, and resilience. As she adjusted the aircraft for a smooth glide, Emma allowed herself a brief, steadying glance at the horizon. The sky stretched endless and brilliant before her, and for the first time, she felt a deep connection to the plane, the squadron, and her own emerging sense of confidence. She had taken control, and the echoes of her call sign reflected not just over the radio, but within her mind, a steady reminder of her capacity to face the unimaginable. The sky had shifted. What had been a brilliant blue now rippled with darker clouds, streaked with pale gray and silver, warning of turbulence ahead. Emma's pulse quickened as she noticed the wind picking up and subtle shakes vibrating through the F-22. She glanced at Captain Reynolds, still unconscious, and then at the instruments. Altitude was stable for now, but the approaching storm promised unpredictable challenges. The squadron's calm voices came over the radio. "Passenger One, minor turbulence ahead. Adjust throttle and bank gently." "We've got you," Emma inhaled, steadying her hands on the control stick. She repeated the mantra she had learned to rely on: stabilize, communicate, follow instructions. The words were her anchor, keeping panic at bay as the first gusts of wind rocked the plane. The F-22 responded to her movements, tilting slightly under her control. Yet Emma knew she had to anticipate the storm, not just react. The turbulence hit, jolting the jet sharply. Emma's stomach lurched, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Passenger One, bank 5 degrees right, reduce throttle slightly," came the squadron leader's voice. Emma followed, twisting the stick and adjusting the throttle, feeling the plane respond smoothly to her input. Relief surged through her as the F-22 leveled. She had managed the first wave of turbulence, but she knew the storm was only beginning. Her senses heightened. Every vibration, every shift in air pressure, every subtle change in the horizon line became a cue. She noticed how the plane responded to gusts differently, at varying speeds and altitudes. Each observation informed her next movement. This was no longer about blindly following instructions. It was about learning in real time, anticipating consequences, and acting with precision. The other F-22s flanked her closely, providing guidance and subtle reassurance. "Passenger One, throttle adjustment, maintain altitude. Flaps neutral." "Excellent correction," said one pilot. Emma acknowledged them quietly, focusing on the task at hand. The sky ahead seemed to pulse with energy, clouds rolling and twisting as the jet carved its path through the atmosphere. Every jolt was a reminder that her responsibility was immense. Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the clouds with brilliant white. Emma's breath caught, but she remembered Reynolds' words from the briefing. Stay calm, stay focused, trust the instruments. Her hands moved with increasing confidence, adjusting throttle, banking gently, and checking every gauge. The storm demanded attention, but Emma felt a strange exhilaration. The combination of fear and control sharpened her mind in ways she had never experienced. The jet rocked violently as a sudden gust pushed it off course. Emma's heart raced, but she reacted instinctively. Heading adjustment, 2 degrees left. Altitude stable. Flaps neutral, she reported. The squadron responded immediately. Good correction, Passenger 1. Smooth and steady. Keep focus. Relief mingled with pride. She had acted independently, successfully, and the knowledge that others relied on her added an unexpected strength to her focus. Sweat stung her eyes, but Emma refused to wipe it away. She had no time for distraction. The storm was dynamic, unpredictable, and the plane's power demanded respect. Every shift of the stick, every adjustment of the throttle, had to be precise. One overcorrection could send the jet spiraling into danger. Yet Emma found herself moving with growing fluidity, her hands anticipating minor shifts before the instruments even registered them. Her mind analyzed the storm's patterns. Darker clouds indicated stronger winds. Subtle changes in the jet's vibrations signaled shifts in air pressure. Emma began to predict the plane's responses, combining instinct with instruction. The squadron's voices continued to guide her, yet now they were partners in a dance of human and machine, providing feedback while she actively led. Her confidence grew incrementally, fueled by every successful maneuver. Suddenly, the plane tilted sharply, caught in a sudden downdraft. Emma froze for a heartbeat, then reacted instinctively, banking sharply to counteract the motion and adjusting throttle to stabilize speed. Altitude stable. Heading corrected. Flaps neutral, she reported. The squadron praised her. Excellent correction, Passenger 1. You're handling this perfectly. Stay steady. Her heart pounded, but a sense of exhilaration mixed with the tension. She realized she was no longer just following orders. She was actively controlling the situation. Lightning illuminated the clouds again, followed by the low rumble of distant thunder. Emma's focus sharpened further. She monitored altitude, speed, throttle, and heading constantly, coordinating every adjustment with the squadron. Each minor success reinforced her confidence. Fear remained, but it had transformed into energy, an alertness that allowed her to act decisively. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. The storm seemed relentless, each gust, shift, and jolt testing her focus. Yet Emma began to notice patterns, the way turbulence built, the timing of downdrafts, the jet's responses to throttle and banking adjustments. She adapted in real time, her hands moving fluidly, her voice steady over the radio. Throttle adjusted. Heading maintained. Flaps neutral. Each repetition became a rhythm, a lifeline, and a demonstration of growing mastery. The other F-22s remained close, flanking her in formation, but Emma could sense a shift in their demeanor. Their voices carried confidence now, subtle awe in their tone. Passenger 1, keep steady. You're doing incredible, said one pilot. The affirmation was unexpected, yet grounding. It reinforced the reality. She had become the anchor, the one the squadron depended on. The call sign was no longer playful. It was authority, recognition, and trust embodied. A sudden, stronger gust jolted the jet violently. Emma's stomach lurched, but she reacted instinctively, adjusting the controls with precision. Her hands moved like extensions of the aircraft, her mind fully attuned to every instrument, every vibration, every subtle cue. Altitude stable. Heading correction complete, she reported. The squadron responded with immediate affirmation, their voices steady, calm, and trusting. The storm continued to rage, but Emma felt a strange exhilaration. She was no longer passive. She was active, in control, and capable of navigating extraordinary circumstances. The fear had transformed into focus, and her confidence had grown to match the intensity of the challenge. She realized she could anticipate, respond, and succeed, even under conditions far beyond anything she had imagined. Lightning streaked across the horizon again, closer this time. Emma's hands tightened on the stick. The F-22 tilted slightly as a gust struck from the side. She countered smoothly, adjusting throttle and banking gently, keeping altitude steady. Flaps neutral. Heading maintained. Altitude stable, she confirmed. The squadron responded instantly. Excellent, Passenger 1. Steady and controlled. Keep it up. Relief, pride, and adrenaline surged through her simultaneously. Sweat poured down her face, yet Emma didn't notice. Her entire being was focused on the flight, on the storm, on the instruments, and on the responsibility she now carried. She had become a part of the aircraft's rhythm, responding to its subtle cues, anticipating its needs, and acting decisively. Each successful maneuver reinforced her belief in her ability to rise to challenges she had never imagined facing. The storm began to thin slightly, clouds scattering, wind easing just enough to allow smoother flight. Emma adjusted throttle, flaps, and heading, guiding the jet back to a more stable course. Relief washed over her, though her awareness remained heightened. She knew that this was only one challenge in a series, and vigilance was essential. For the first time since the flight began, Emma allowed herself to recognize the transformation she had undergone. From a terrified passenger, she had become an active pilot under extreme conditions, capable of managing not just the aircraft, but the trust of an entire squadron. Her voice, calm and precise, her hands steady and deliberate, and her mind, sharp and focused, had combined to navigate a literal storm. The call sign, Passenger 1, echoed again over the radio, this time with genuine respect. Passenger 1, maintain heading. Excellent work. You've handled the storm perfectly. Emma repeated it silently, a mantra affirming her courage, skill, and transformation. She had survived the storm, and she had thrived. The storm had passed, leaving a sky streaked with the soft glow of the late afternoon sun. Clouds had begun to scatter, and the turbulence that had threatened to shake the jet into chaos had diminished to subtle rolls and vibrations. Yet the danger was far from over. Ahead lay the most difficult part of the flight, returning safely to base. Emma's pulse quickened at the realization. Every ounce of focus, every skill she had gained in the past hour, would be tested in the moments to come. Passenger 1, prepare for descent, came the squadron leader's calm, steady voice. We'll guide you step by step. Focus on altitude, heading, and airspeed. You've got this. Emma nodded, though he could not see her. Her hands tightened on the control stick, muscles tense but precise. She felt an unusual combination of exhilaration, fatigue, and nervous anticipation. Landing a supersonic fighter jet was a challenge even for trained pilots. She, a civilian, would rely entirely on guidance, instinct, and courage. The instruments blinked as she initiated a slow descent, throttle reducing carefully under the squadron's instructions. She repeated aloud every adjustment, every measurement, to maintain clarity. Altitude decreasing. Speed controlled. Heading 280. Flaps neutral. The rhythm of repetition helped calm her racing thoughts. Each successful minor adjustment reinforced her growing confidence. She could feel the F-22 respond seamlessly, tilting gently as she guided it toward the airbase. Suddenly, a brief gust of wind nudged the plane slightly off alignment. Emma's stomach lurched, but she reacted instantly. banking slightly and adjusting throttle. Heading corrected. Altitude stable, she reported. The squadron responded immediately. Good, Passenger 1. Smooth correction. Stay steady. Relief washed over her, but Emma knew that the landing would demand precision, far beyond what she had just accomplished. Every second would matter. Every tiny miscalculation could escalate into disaster. She scanned the horizon, spotting the airbase in the distance. Runways stretched like ribbons across the landscape, and the flat expanse of tarmac beckoned her. Emma took a deep breath. She had navigated turbulence, stabilized the plane, and earned the squadron's trust, but landing required perfect coordination, timing, and nerves of steel. She repeated her mantra: stabilize, communicate, follow instructions. It grounded her, focusing her attention on what she could control. Passenger 1, reduce speed to 450 knots. Begin approach to runway 27, instructed the squadron leader. Emma adjusted throttle, monitoring speed carefully. The F-22 tilted slightly, responding smoothly to her touch. Her hands no longer shook as they had in the early stages of the flight. They moved with precision, guided by focus, instinct, and the rhythm of her voice echoing instructions aloud. The final approach began. Emma's eyes alternated between instruments and the visual markers of the runway. The jet responded perfectly to minor adjustments in throttle, flaps, and banking. She repeated every measurement aloud. Altitude 3,000 feet. Heading 270. Speed 450 knots. Flaps neutral. Each repetition reinforced clarity, ensuring no detail was overlooked. The airbase grew larger in her view, every building and runway marking providing cues for alignment. A sudden gust of wind threatened to push the jet off course. Emma reacted instinctively, banking slightly and adjusting throttle to maintain heading and speed. Correction complete. Altitude stable. Heading steady, she reported over the radio. The squadron responded immediately. Excellent, Passenger 1. You're steady. Keep focus. Her heart raced, but the surge of confidence that followed reinforced her determination. She was no longer a terrified passenger. She was an active pilot, capable of responding under extreme pressure. As the jet descended further, Emma adjusted flaps to begin the landing sequence. The controls felt responsive, intuitive, and alive. Each movement required careful calculation. Too steep, and the landing could be catastrophic. Too shallow, and the jet might overshoot. She repeated her measurements and adjustments aloud, synchronizing with the squadron's instructions. Every second demanded precision, focus, and composure. The runway grew larger beneath her, its lines crisp and defined. Emma's hands moved automatically, balancing throttle, flaps, and rudder adjustments with fluidity. She could feel the jet's response beneath her, subtle yet immediate. Her mind worked in overdrive, processing information faster than she had ever imagined possible. The airspeed, altitude, and heading aligned perfectly under her control. Passenger 1, reduce speed to 350 knots. Final approach aligned with runway 27, the squadron leader instructed. Emma complied, easing the throttle and adjusting the flaps carefully. She repeated the measurements aloud, maintaining rhythm and focus. Speed 350 knots. Altitude 500 feet. Heading aligned with runway 27. Flaps deployed to landing configuration. The repetition reinforced clarity, helping her maintain calm under pressure. As she neared the runway, the tension reached its peak. Emma's heart pounded, yet her hands remained steady. The F-22 responded precisely, gliding smoothly along the final approach. She felt the subtle changes in wind and turbulence, adjusting each movement with careful precision. Her voice remained steady over the radio. Altitude 100 feet. Speed 350 knots. Heading steady. Flaps fully deployed. The runway stretched closer. Emma focused entirely on alignment, throttle, and landing gear. She remembered Reynolds' instructions from the briefing, visualizing the exact motions he had demonstrated. Her hands and mind moved in harmony, guided by instinct, training, and trust in the squadron. Each minor adjustment brought the jet closer to a perfect touchdown. Passenger 1, touchdown confirmed visually. Begin flare maneuver, came the squadron leader's voice. Emma adjusted the throttle, lifting the nose slightly to soften the landing. The jet descended with precision, wheels brushing against the runway in a smooth, controlled motion. Relief, exhilaration, and disbelief surged simultaneously. She had done it. She had landed an F-22, an aircraft designed for elite pilots safely, under extraordinary circumstances. The runway stretched beneath them as Emma guided the jet to a complete stop. She exhaled slowly, her body relaxing for the first time since the pilot collapsed. The squadron's voices erupted in applause and congratulation. Passenger 1, outstanding work. Absolutely steady under extreme conditions. Incredible composure. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she released the controls, but her mind was clear. She had survived, succeeded, and transformed. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to look at Captain Reynolds. Though still unconscious, he was safe, and the jet had been guided expertly. Emma felt a swell of pride, tempered by exhaustion. She realized that this flight had tested every ounce of courage, focus, and determination she possessed. She had become more than a passenger. She had become a pilot in the truest sense of the word. The call sign, Passenger 1, echoed in her mind, no longer a joke, but a symbol of achievement, courage, and resilience. The squadron had trusted her, and she had risen to the challenge. Every maneuver, every correction, every careful adjustment had carried weight beyond imagination. She had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed, a combination of focus, instinct, and courage capable of mastering the impossible. As the F-22 taxied toward the base, Emma allowed herself a moment of reflection. The flight that had begun as a thrilling adventure had become a crucible, forging her into someone capable of extraordinary action under pressure. She felt transformed, empowered, and profoundly grateful. The lessons of fear, focus, and trust would remain with her forever. The F-22 rolled steadily along the tarmac, tires screeching softly against the runway. Emma's hands, once trembling, now rested lightly on the controls, her mind still buzzing from the intensity of the flight. She exhaled deeply, the first truly calm breath she had taken in over an hour. The storm had passed, the runway had been conquered, and Captain Reynolds remained stable beside her. For the first time, the enormity of what she had accomplished began to sink in. The squadron's voices echoed over the radio, but now they carried a different tone, one of admiration, relief, and genuine awe. Passenger 1, outstanding work. You handled extreme conditions, maintained perfect control, and executed a textbook landing. Exceptional composure. The words caused a lump to form in Emma's throat. She had expected gratitude for following instructions, but the recognition felt far deeper. She had earned respect, trust, and even admiration from seasoned fighter pilots. Emma allowed herself a tentative smile, the tension in her shoulders slowly releasing. The F-22 taxied toward the hangar, the engines gradually slowing, yet the adrenaline still pulsed through her veins. She glanced at Captain Reynolds, grateful that he was safe, though unconscious. She had carried the responsibility for his life and the safety of the jet through turbulence, a storm, and supersonic speed. The weight of that responsibility now transformed into pride, a quiet validation of her courage and focus. As the jet came to a stop, the squadron pilots descended from their aircraft, running toward the landing strip. Their expressions were a mixture of amazement and respect. Captain Daniels, the squadron leader, stepped forward first, his helmet under his arm. He stopped beside the F-22, staring at Emma with a rare mixture of astonishment and approval. "Passenger 1, he began, his voice firm but warm. "I've never seen a civilian handle a situation like that. You remained calm, precise, and absolutely in command. You saved the flight." Emma's cheeks flushed, a mix of embarrassment and exhilaration. She had never considered herself a hero. She was just trying to follow instructions and keep everyone safe. Yet the squadron's words carried the weight of truth. She had acted decisively, thought clearly, and risen to a challenge that few trained pilots would face successfully. The call sign that had started as a joke now symbolized her courage and competence. One by one, the pilots approached, shaking her hand or patting her shoulder. "Incredible job," said Lieutenant Park. "I can't believe how smoothly you handled the storm. I've flown F-22s for 10 years, and I've never seen control like that under pressure." Another pilot nodded in agreement. "Passenger 1, you're officially earning a new reputation today." Emma felt her stomach tighten at the praise, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. She had become more than a passenger. She had become a pilot. Captain Reynolds, now awake and alert, stirred beside her. His eyes widened as he registered the situation. "Emma?" he asked, voice hoarse. You did this?" She nodded, still processing the adrenaline and relief. "I followed your instructions, and the squadron helped. I didn't know if I could." Reynolds shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe it. You not only saved us, you handled the storm, maintained formation, and landed perfectly. You were amazing." His praise, sincere and astonished, caused a shiver of both pride and humility to run through her. The realization hit Emma fully. She had taken control of an F-22, maintained the safety of herself, the pilot, and the jet, and earned the respect of elite Air Force pilots. Her transformation was complete from passenger to pilot, from observer to hero. The call sign, Passenger 1, would forever carry a new meaning. It was not a joke, but a recognition of her courage, skill, and ability to rise to the unimaginable. After ensuring Reynolds' condition was stable, Emma finally stepped out of the cockpit. The late afternoon sun highlighted the metallic sheen of the F-22, and she felt a strange combination of exhaustion and exhilaration. Every muscle in her body was tense, yet satisfied. The runway behind her represented not just a successful landing, but the culmination of fear, courage, and determination. The squadron gathered around her, their expressions a mix of pride and awe. Captain Daniels addressed her again, voice carrying the weight of authority and admiration. "Emma, today you proved that courage, focus, and determination can surpass even years of training. You've earned our respect and gratitude. The squadron will remember this flight, and so will history." Emma's throat tightened. She had never imagined that an ordinary experience, being a passenger, could transform into something so extraordinary. Photographers from the base arrived, capturing images of Emma beside the F-22, alongside the squadron. The press would later recount the story as a remarkable display of composure under pressure. But for Emma, it was a personal journey. She had faced fear, embraced responsibility, and discovered an inner strength she never knew she possessed. The landing was more than a triumph of skill. It was a triumph of courage, focus, and human resilience. Captain Reynolds approached, extending his hand. "I owe you my life," he said quietly. "You kept us safe. I've never been prouder to be flying with someone like you." Emma shook his hand, humbled and grateful. She realized that today, she had stepped into a world she had admired from the sidelines, and for a brief, intense period, she had been the one in command. As the squadron prepared the jets for debriefing, Emma took a final glance at the F-22, the aircraft that had seemed overwhelming and terrifying hours ago, now appeared as an extension of her own focus and determination. She traced the contours with her eyes, marveling at the technology she had piloted with courage, precision, and instinct. The storm, the turbulence, the pressure, all of it had led to this moment of triumph. The call sign, Passenger 1, was repeated one final time over the radio, this time with admiration rather than instruction. Passenger 1, outstanding work today. You handled everything flawlessly. Emma smiled, the words resonating deeply within her. They were not just praise, they were validation of her courage, skill, and resilience. She had faced extraordinary challenges, and she had emerged not only unscathed, but victorious. Exhausted yet exhilarated, Emma allowed herself a moment of reflection. The sky, now calm and golden with the setting sun, mirrored her sense of accomplishment. She had confronted fear, embraced responsibility, and discovered an inner strength she never knew existed. The journey from passenger to pilot had transformed her forever, leaving her with a profound sense of courage, focus, and confidence. The sun had fully dipped below the horizon, casting the base in a soft, golden glow. The F-22s rested silently on the tarmac, engines cooled, a metallic sheen reflecting the fading light. Emma stood among the squadron, still absorbing the reality of what had just happened. She had gone from terrified passenger to decisive pilot in the span of a few hours, guiding an aircraft through a storm, turbulence, and finally executing a perfect landing. The experience had been exhausting, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Captain Daniels approached her again, his expression one of genuine admiration. "Emma," he said, voice steady and sincere, "what you accomplished today is remarkable. You faced fear, uncertainty, and extreme pressure, and you excelled. The squadron will remember this flight for years to come. You've earned a place in our history, even as a civilian." Emma felt a rush of emotion, a mixture of pride, relief, and disbelief. She had never imagined that a single flight could change her life so profoundly. Captain Reynolds, now fully recovered and alert, walked toward her with a wide, appreciative smile. "I can't thank you enough," he said. "You kept us safe. You controlled that jet with skill, courage, and calm I never thought a civilian could summon. You've set a new standard for bravery under pressure." Emma blushed, humbled. She had never sought praise or recognition. She had simply focused on surviving, on keeping the aircraft and crew safe. Yet the recognition was undeniable, and it filled her with an unexpected sense of accomplishment. The squadron gathered around, patting her on the shoulder and exchanging words of praise. Each pilot spoke of the calm precision with which she had managed the jet, her ability to anticipate challenges, and the composure she had maintained under extraordinary circumstances. Emma listened quietly, absorbing the words, letting them sink in. The camaraderie, the respect, the acknowledgement, it was overwhelming, but deeply affirming. She had not only survived, but had become a hero in the eyes of those she had long admired. News crews arrived soon after, capturing footage of Emma beside the F-22, surrounded by the squadron. Reporters asked questions, each one highlighting the incredible story of a civilian taking control of a fighter jet under extreme conditions. Emma answered humbly, careful not to overstate her role. "I followed the instructions I was given," she said. "I stayed calm, focused, and listened to the squadron. They guided me every step of the way. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible." Her words reflected not only humility, but the reality that teamwork and trust had been as crucial as courage. Despite the attention, Emma's mind wandered back to the flight itself. She replayed the moments of turbulence, the storm, the maneuvers, and the landing. Each challenge had tested her nerves, skill, and focus, pushing her beyond anything she had imagined she could handle. She realized that the transformation she had undergone was not temporary. It had revealed a strength within her that would remain forever. Fear had been her teacher, focus her ally, and courage her constant companion. The base commander approached, formally congratulating Emma on her achievement. He presented her with a certificate of recognition, citing her exceptional composure and remarkable skill during an unprecedented emergency. Emma accepted it with gratitude, humbled by the honor. She understood that the recognition was more than symbolic. It was a testament to what determination, focus, and courage could achieve. A civilian had performed a feat many trained pilots might have struggled to accomplish, and done so flawlessly. Even as the accolades poured in, Emma felt a quiet sense of reflection. The flight had begun as a thrill, an opportunity to experience the world of fighter jets up close. Yet it had transformed into a profound lesson about courage, responsibility, and self-belief. She realized that the call sign, Passenger 1, had become a symbol not of fear or inexperience, but of the capacity to rise above limitations, embrace challenges, and act decisively when it mattered most. Days later, the story of Passenger 1 spread across news outlets, social media, and military publications. Pilots and civilians alike celebrated the extraordinary account of a young woman taking command of an F-22 under dire circumstances. Emma's life had changed in an instant. Invitations to speak, interviews, and opportunities to share her story poured in, yet she remained grounded. For her, the story was not about fame, it was about proving to herself that courage, focus, and resilience could make the impossible achievable. The squadron continued to honor her in subtle ways. Pilots shared anecdotes of the flight, calling her Passenger 1 in a tone of respect and admiration. The nickname, once playful and casual, had become a badge of courage and skill. Emma carried it with quiet pride, aware that it symbolized not just one flight, but an entire journey from fear to mastery, from observer to participant, from uncertainty to confidence. Emma reflected on how much she had grown. The experience had taught her the importance of calm under pressure, the value of listening and learning, and the power of courage when faced with uncertainty. She realized that life itself often presented unforeseen challenges, moments that demanded focus, resolve, and bravery. The lessons of the flight would stay with her, guiding her in future decisions, personal challenges, and professional opportunities. In the months that followed, Emma remained connected to the squadron. She visited regularly, learning more about aviation, participating in simulations, and sharing her perspective as a civilian who had experienced the extraordinary. Her story inspired not only pilots, but anyone facing situations that demanded courage and composure. She had become more than a passenger. She had become a symbol of resilience, determination, and the human capacity to rise above fear. Even years later, when recalling the flight, Emma could feel the tension, the adrenaline, and the exhilaration as vividly as the moment it happened. She remembered the storm, the turbulence, the challenge of controlling the F-22, and the intense focus required to land safely. But more than that, she remembered the realization that she was capable of extraordinary focus, decisive action, and courage under pressure. The call sign Passenger 1 remained a part of her identity, not just as a story or a nickname, but as a testament to her resilience. It reminded her of what was possible when fear was transformed into focus, when courage guided action, and when trust and guidance were combined with determination. She had faced the impossible and emerged not only unscathed, but triumphant. Emma stood once more on the tarmac, gazing at the F-22, the sky painted with the hues of sunset. The flight had changed her forever, shaping her sense of courage, responsibility, and self-belief. The echoes of that day would stay with her always, a reminder that in moments of uncertainty and danger, extraordinary strength could emerge from the most unexpected places. The story of Passenger 1 would live on not just in news reports or squadron tailies, but in the lessons she carried forward in every decision, every challenge, and every moment of life to come.